Well, hey there, Streakers. How are you? Hopefully fantastic. Jamie and I are excited to talk to you about today about something that has been brewing for quite some time. It's our streaking reels that are going to be released one by one starting February 1st. So let's talk about that today and let's start streaking.
I'm excited to talk about this because I get to ask you a whole bunch of questions today.
I get to ask you questions too, but yeah, it's going to be fun because when we started on this adventure of the streaking reels, it was a little while back when we were talking about the difference between streaking and habit. And we were trying to figure out how do we convey that message because it's not one that is easily conveyed. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's not. And it's one that's interesting too because I feel like people are a little divided in the sense that some people feel like this definition is super important, and other people are like, I don't understand why you make that such a big deal. Like, is it really important that we have that solid definition in place?
And would you say that, and as you look at it, because I know I feel like it's important to have that definition in place.
I feel like we both feel the same way at its level of importance, but we feel differently about the way that we communicate it, which is par for the course of our whole married life.
You feel that to communicate, well, what do you mean as far as how we communicate it?
I like to be just a little bit more persuasive about it. But going back to why we feel it's important. So I think, and we've talked about this a lot, so that's why it's interesting that we're talking about it again.
Right.
But probably because it's so prevalent. The word habits and creating good habits is everywhere. However, what that means seems to vary from person to person.
Right.
And so I guess it's important to me because I feel like understanding the definition is the first part of managing my own expectations.
I think
and
that
then maybe
that
other
right
people's
there is
expectations.
critical right there. Understanding the definition is to manage expectations. The reason why I say that's critical is because early on when we were talking to anyone about streaking, what they would do is say, oh, so it's another way to build habits. And immediately it caused in me a little bit of an allergic reaction. And
a little bit.
A little bit. It was a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I've read the books. I mean, I've read habit books, and that's where, honestly, we started. If you go back to the episode on This is Streaking, number 240, we talk all about trying to set up a habit. And when I would hear people say, well, it's just another way to set up a habit, I thought, no, it's really not. And that's important.
Right. Why? Why did you feel it was so important when people... Because why can't you just look at it and say, oh, yeah, there's a common understanding? Because that's what people were trying to do.
Right.
Is to say, oh, this is my framework, setting up good habits, and what streaking is a way to do that. But we totally say, no, that's not true.
That's not true. Because, and this was interesting, yesterday... Jamie and I were talking with a group of people, and we asked them to define the word habit. And no matter what, in all of our tests,
and interesting because the group of people was young people.
Yeah.
So they're in their beginning their journey of understanding the world. I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And they said two things: things you do repeatedly, and things it's automatic, or you do involuntarily.
Yep.
You don't think about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what they said. Things that you do again and again and again is how they said it. And then things that you do without having to think about it.
Right. And the hope is always that number one will turn into number two, that the things I do repeatedly will become automatic. And what I found in my life, and the reason why I find this, it's the allergic reaction, is because in everything that I've done that is requiring growth is intentional. It has to be intentional.
Yep.
It has to be on the forefront of the mind. If it goes back to the area of automatic, and this is so one of the things in the short, the short that's coming out or the reel that's coming out, I love how our streaking, you meet Streaking, and she's phenomenal. We'll tell you a little bit about how we found streaking and how we found habit. But these two individuals who are actors who personify this, she says this great line. She says, people can get into a lot of trouble when they do things without thinking.
which we all know is very true. I think we've all been in that situation.
Exactly.
Where we're like, probably should have thought about that one.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So that's why I would get just an allergic reaction, is because I had done what was necessary in order to set up something in my life to be automatic, and it did not become automatic. And so I thought that the fault was with me. Mm-hmm. So when people say, oh, streaks, that's just another way to set up habits, I push back because it's not another way to set up habits. Now, habits may fall out of streaks. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is when I'm typing on the keyboard, I'm not thinking about the motor skills of where my fingers are flying to hit the letters.
Right.
But I do intentionally have to have a streak that says I'm going to write at least one sentence every day. That one is not automatic.
Right. And the thing that's interesting is that it can be developing good habits if the only way you define a habit is by something that you do repeatedly. But the problem that we've seen is that is not... That's
not how it's defined. And in fact, James Clear, who is the foremost authority on habits, he wrote Atomic Habits, he says the definition of a habit is something you do repeatedly until it's automatic.
Right.
That is, and he is like the world-renowned authority on this.
Even within automatic, people have varying different definitions of what automatic means.
True. Yeah.
And so that was my biggest thing, is just managing that expectation. And why? Because of exactly what you said. When you fall short, who do you blame? You blame yourself.
Yeah. I somehow didn't stand in the right line in heaven, and therefore I don't have what it takes to continue to grow and improve in a big and significant way.
So that can start to weigh on us, and then we lose that momentum that we've created to keep going. And so I think that is why it bothers you so much, is because one of your gifts and talents in this world is that you have a basic belief in people, like a really strong belief in the good of people. And so I think when we have this misguided definition that people then are placing everything on, and then that definition fails them, but they believe it's the definition that's true and their own failures, you get frustrated because you're like, no, this isn't a you problem. This is a definition and a tool problem that can be solved.
Yeah, it can be solved. And
so
that's a really good point. I mean, that something that you just brought up is because that's the other reason why I think I get an allergic reaction, is because I believe that all people everywhere have within them the makings of greatness, no matter what. And that if we don't have the tools, then we blame ourselves rather than looking at it as the tool. I'm an amateur carpenter. I go out in the shop all the time and work on any number of projects. When I first started in carpentry, I had a couple of tools, and carpentry was pretty frustrating. Mm-hmm. But now I've got a full shop of tools, and I mean, I can go out in the shop and produce something pretty quickly.
Your ability to do so many things
because I have the right tools.
Because you have the right tools. And the interesting thing is there's enough in life that is our responsibility, that is ours to be like, yeah, you need to own that and take it. We need to be able to differentiate those things where it's like, yeah, this is your responsibility and you need to make that change, versus, no, you did everything right, the tool isn't working right for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important distinction. So that brings us to this place where you came to me one day.
Yep.
And you said, if I can remember this right, at the time you were calling them commercials, but you said, I want to produce 52 commercials. And this was in the end of September. Was it October that you did this? Was it it was 1st of October or end of September?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And then you said, and I want to do it before Thanksgiving. No, let me repeat that, you guys. He came to me and said, I want to do 52 commercials, and I want it done by Thanksgiving. And it's the first week in October. And I was just like, well, I've lived with you long enough to sometimes I'm like, oh, okay. So it was great though. I was like, commercials, huh? Okay. She is really good. I have to tell you this. So she has gotten very, very good at just going with my ideas,
knowing that it'll probably be modified quite significantly from the grandeur of what I bring about.
I have to balance this thing in my life where sometimes you say these things and I'm like, that is totally crazy and impossible, with the times that you have brought crazy to the table and made it possible.
Like the time that I said we're going to build a river in our backyard.
Yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, we're not. That river was my favorite thing
feature
in our backyard.
Yes.
So this is the thoughts that go through my head. Is my first thought is, here we go again. This is crazy. There's no way he's going to do it. Quickly followed by, well, you had the river in your backyard and you loved it. So maybe. But I was able to talk you down to say 52. I was great with 52, but I wasn't good with the amount of time that we had to do it.
Right.
So I talked you down to 24.
Yeah. Exactly. Basically cut it in half.
I cut it in half.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, maybe we could.
Maybe we can 26, 24, 26.
I can settle with 24-ish. And then to be honest, I washed my hands of the project and I was like, if you want to do this, you go get them.
It's all you.
And you're talking about putting up ads at BYU for local people that are in the theater program.
Well, because
like,
so
okay.
Here's what happened. So as I came up with this idea, because we needed to differentiate streaking from habit.
Yes.
And we needed to have it somewhere. I remembered the Mac commercials of old.
Yes.
Mac versus PC. And I got on and I started watching those. And I thought, you know what? This is a perfect format and forum to be able to have streaking versus habit. Mm-hmm. And where we have streaking being able to define themselves.
At what point did you have the idea of creating streaking and habit to be personified by people?
When it was when I was watching those commercials, because I thought that streaking, the personification of streaking would be so much easier to understand streaking rather than trying to put it in any. I mean, we had to this point. I mean, we've been at this now. So we've been streaking for over 7 years. We're coming up on 8 years of streaking. As far as putting it out there to the world, it's been about 2.5 years that we've been doing that. And it just is, it takes a lot of words like what we're doing right now to describe the difference between streaking and habit.
And we've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how can we define streaking quicker and differentiate it from habits quicker.
So what I thought is if we could have a commercial that within, for me, it was like a couple of minutes or a short or a reel within a couple of minutes to be able to describe this, it'd be great. And in my mind, I thought, oh, we could do this. And so I proposed it to the streaking team and everyone's like, okay. And I said, let's do 26 because Jami had talked me down by that point. And everyone kind of looked at me like, oh, okay. And I said, and I'm going to start writing scripts for it. And so I started to write scripts for it.
Which is another thing I love about you, because you said, I'm going to start doing this. And then the next time I talked to you, literally you had like 10 scripts that you'd already started doing. You were very excited about it. And I was like, okay, well, this is kind of fun. So, still your project.
Yeah, still my
In my mind, it was still your project.
Yeah, but you were getting more on board with it.
I was getting more on board with it. So you started to meet,
because when the scripts started to come to life, and this was with all the streaking team, we started to do the scripts. This was Laurel and Katie and Talon. Even Dave, the developer, got in on the scripts.
Had a couple ideas.
He had a couple ideas on the
fun
scripts.
ways that we could.
You got in on it. I mean, we had all kinds of people just start to get on it, and then there were a couple of really neat things that happened along the way. But the scripts was the start of it.
That was the start. And that was fun because we were coming up with some fun ideas. And like you said,
because as I got going, I'm like, well, we should personify routine, we should personify goal, we should have habit, have streaking meet goal and streaking meet routine, and talk about those things. I got really excited. And I think I wrote probably 15, 20 scripts. I don't think I wrote all 26, but I wrote quite a few.
A fair amount, yeah. So then we kind of hit this bump in the road where we have Talon, who has great filming abilities. So we knew we had someone that could film this and had great connections with helping us get a studio. So that was the first thing that happened, is you booked and paid for You rented a studio.
A studio with what Talon, and Talon's really good at this because he's been in videography and he knows a lot of the lingo, has worked with cameras and everything else. He's absolutely phenomenal. And the shooting that you see on the reels was all done by Talon. So Talon did all the editing and the shooting. But so he and I were talking about it. And he said, well, I've got a studio. We'll get a cycle. And I said, we'll book it. And so we chose a date sometime in the future and booked it.
What was it? 3 weeks out from when?
It was
a little more?
It was a little more than that. It was probably about 6 weeks out because it was far enough away that I was like, okay, we got to find some actors to do this. And at first I was like, well, we can just do this. And
yes,
Talon,
you were like, we can do this. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. And Talon, bless his heart's like, we need to get real actors.
Yeah. We need to
I was like,
this.
okay.
Because at one point we were looking at our family. Do you think our daughter could be streaking?
Or do you think this person or that person? And we were just, so we booked the studio with the psych wall. And we started to get the script, and we were trying to figure out what's going to be next, or how do we get actors. And I thought, well, we live close to BYU's campus, so I'll post up an ad, and we'll just get some actors.
We'll just get some theater students to come.
This is Mr. Ignorance and naivety.
Won't be that big of a deal at all.
Anyway, it just, for whatever reason, and I want to ask you guys, if you find this in life, that when you come up against something, in other words, you have an idea and you try to carry that idea through, there comes a point where it just gets blocked, where I can't go any further. And that was the case with these actors.
Yes.
I was blocked. I couldn't get any further past it.
But I loved that as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about the part in the Indiana Jones movie. It's not the first movie, but it's the
third movie.
The one where he's after where they get the Holy Grail.
Yes.
And he has to cross the chasm, and it takes a leap of faith.
Yes.
I felt like this was it, that you had taken that first step, and you're looking and thinking, well, now what? I'm kind of stuck.
I'm here on
and it's a kind of a fun thing because you're in the movie, it's a precipice that they have to cross there's a huge chasm and they have to get across this chasm. But from the looks of it, there's no way to do it. And so you just take this leap of faith, like you're going to fall off the chasm.
Yeah.
And then you find out that there's
an
invisible bridge there.
Yeah,
and it's not invisible, but the way that it is, you can't see
it's camouflaged.
It's camouflaged.
Yeah. That's how it was.
That's what it felt like, is when you booked the studio, you're like, all right, here we go. We're taking the first step. And then you were kind of stuck on this precipice where you're like, well, I can't go back, but I can't see how to go forward.
So then we called a good friend of ours, Tiffany, because I was trying to mull through this and figure it out. And I said, how do I get the actors? How do I put something up? And you said, well, why don't you just call Tiffany? Tiffany was in all of the
musical theater in college
and all those things. Maybe she has friends.
Which was great because I had just gone on a weekend retreat with Tiffany, and we had gone to a show at the college campus, and she knew several of the people that were in the show.
Right.
So you're like, okay, just call Tiffany. She's still plugged into that world.
So I called her and I explained what we were doing. We were shooting these reels and we wanted to get some professional actors, and would she know how to get a hold of someone on campus so that we could advertise for this? And she said it was almost as if she's like, why are you asking me this question? Why don't you just ask Marty? And I'm like, oh, Marty. And the reason I said that is because I had met Marty like 2 months ago, and he had told me that he was in musical theater. In fact, he and Tiffany had done some work up in Alaska at a musical theater, and she said, just ask him. He knows all of that.
Yep, that's how they had met, and that's how we had met Marty.
Right.
So then you called
I called Marty, and wow. Was that was how we got across the bridge.
Yep.
That was how the rest of the bridge came together, because Marty all of a sudden said, yeah, I can do this. And
can I just say, it is so much fun when you meet someone that has a gift for the thing that you need.
Yes.
And it's like they just take it. They take your little tiny offering of an idea that looks like in cooking terms, you're like, here's my lump of whatever this is. But I in my head, it looks this way, but what I'm giving you looks nothing like what I have in my head.
Right.
And they take it and they're like, oh, this is great. And they work their magic and they give it back to you. And you're like, it's so much better than what I thought it could be.
That's how I feel about every single person on the Streaking team. I mean, Dave's that way with the app and all the developers. You've got Steven and Cam and Trey and all those people. And then you get Laurel and the content team and Laurel and Lauren and Marty's
Katie
on the
and
content
Kathleen.
and Katie and Kathleen. I mean, all these people just take it and make it so much more than I ever thought it could be.
And sometimes the ideas that you hand these people, you're like, here, this is coming in with, what is it? Duct tape and baling wire.
Duct tape and baling wire, baby.
So, turn this into something beautiful and then publish it to the world.
So Marty, I tell him the idea of everything, and I ask him if he's in. He says yeah, and so we draw up a contract with him, and he takes on the job of getting the actors and of directing these reels. Well, there's still the idea that I have in my head that we're going to shoot 26 of these.
Yes.
And I love
did
how
Talon knock you down to 12? At one point we were at 12. We got to 12.
I don't know. Well, what happened is, and this is great because Talon and Marty and everyone on the team knows how to work with me.
They do.
They really do. They're like, Jeff, that sounds really good. And I don't know, and this was Marty, I don't know if 26 is a real good number. Even 12 may be too much. And I'm like...
And he was great because he's like, we really want to make sure that we're getting quality and communicating the message you really want to communicate. Right. And I don't think we can do that with 16 or 12.
And so at that point, one of the things that I've learned and one of the streaks that I've had as far as, I mean, your streak is the feedback streak.
Yes.
My streak is the read at least a paragraph in a nonfiction book. And one of the books that's influenced me quite significantly is Impro for Theater, Improvisation for Theater, mm-hmm. and it's blocking versus accepting. And one of the conscious choices I've made is that when someone with expertise in a certain area or even not expertise is suggesting something, I'm completely open to it. And so I was open to what Marty said, which was, I think 8 will be plenty.
And my memory of this, because you guys were meeting at the kitchen table, and I was kind of just cleaning up around the kitchen and listening. And I feel like your back was turned to me, and Marty was like, I'm thinking 8. And I'm just like, yes. Yes, thank you, Marty. I think 8 is totally doable.
And so, and I forgot that we were at actually an in-person meeting in this day and age of meeting over video, but we were in person and he said 8. And I thought, okay, we can do 8. And then the hard work started to take these 26 or 26 scripts. I forget exactly how many there were, and pick out 8 that were going to communicate the message in a way that was, and this is what Marty brought to us.
This is what Marty brought to us.
This was so cool because he thought about it. He came back and he said, look, these reels shorts need to do 3 things. They need to entertain, they need to educate, and they need to empower.
Which,
wow.
Once he did that and gave us, it's the same feeling I often have with streaking. I'm like, you gave me a framework.
That educates me on what I can do.
Bump everything up against that framework and measure it. I guess I can measure everything against that. And it helps me make my decisions. It helps me make it better. And that's what I feel like really happened once you had that. Once we understood that, we were like, look, we want to entertain because that's what captures people.
Fun.
It's entertaining. It's fun. 2, we need to educate so that people understand what our message is. And then after they've been entertained and educated, they need to be empowered to action.
To be able to do this.
To be able to do it. Once he was able to capsulate that, and then also love that there was alliteration so we could remember it.
Yes.
That became kind of the thing that we measured everything against that you guys did in writing your scripts and picking the actors and all of that.
Right. Yeah, it was because, and then he did something else with his expertise that people won't notice, but it was critical for the way that we developed the scripts. and he made some rules around what habit could do and what streaking could do. And he said, habit only ever talks about and educates about habit, and streaking only ever talks about and educates about streaking.
And I loved this because
that was like a mind blow. I mean, it was just, and you'll see it. You won't really see it in the scripts, but it flows so right.
When he brought that to the table, it reminded me when for 11 years, you were a regional practice leader for Franklin Covey. And as a consultant, you went to all different kinds of companies and met with their executive teams to help them decide their goals and things that they were going to do for that year. And I remember asking you one time, because I thought it was so unique that you're in a profession that every time you go and talk to people, you're talking to someone in a completely different industry.
Yeah.
And I asked, I'm like, how do you not get intimidated to be going into the executives of these companies and telling them how they should do their business? And you said, well, that's the first thing, is I'm not telling them how to do their business. The biggest thing that I have to remember in all of my consulting is that there's my backyard and your backyard. And I can invite you into my backyard and you can invite me into your backyard, but it has to be by invitation only.
Actually, I'm not even allowed to go in their backyard.
Oh, so you can invite them into your backyard, but you stay in your own yard.
Yeah. And the reason why is because in their backyard is all their strategy, all their knowledge, all their information, everything they have. They can bring the methodology and also the framework into their backyard if they choose to. But if they come, but they're always welcome in my backyard. And I'll tell you, when you come into the backyard of, this was the 4 disciplines of execution, I'll let you know what works and doesn't work in this backyard.
Because you're in my backyard. This is my backyard and my area of expertise.
Right.
That's what I thought about when Marty said, streaking is going to talk about streaking, but never teach you about habits.
Streaking, right?
And habits is the authority on habits. And I thought about that, and I was like, that's my backyard and your backyard, and we need to stay in our backyards where we have our understanding of our expertise, and not go in someone else's backyard and start telling them how to mow their lawn.
Exactly. And that is one of the beautiful areas that these reels do, is they teach streaking and habit. And the other thing is, remember how I wanted them 2 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah. Both Talon and Marty were like, Jeff, that's really ambitious. That's a long time. And so every single one of them is under a minute. Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole thing is anywhere from 45 to 55 seconds with the title plates on it. It's like a minute.
So when you said, thus begins the hard work, that's really what they were saying to you is, well, Jeff, we're going to have to work a little harder because we're going to make them shorter.
Shorter.
Which makes me think of, is it Mark Twain that said, I'm sorry, I wrote you a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one.
Yes, that is it.
So
we spent hours and back and forth and
combing
combing over every single word in every single script.
So you and Talon and Marty literally went through it again and again and again. And then you would bring that particular script to the team. And we would go through it.
And they would have all kinds of suggestions.
And again, yes.
And by the way, every single iteration just got better. Mm-hmm. It got, I remember when we were on the final iterations of the script, it was the night before we were going to shoot. And we had the whole streaking team over. And we were all sitting and we were going through every script.
Yep.
Every single one. And I remember there was a moment where Laurel had this poignant thought about one particular script, and then Dave had a thought about another particular script that was poignant, and then you came in with something,
and Katie would say, I think this word would be better here.
And it was just this really neat collaborative process that made these scripts just sing.
And people bringing to the table things where it's like, well, I think you're trying to say this, but it made me think of this. So could we say that better?
Yeah.
Which was so huge, because how often communication is so tricky that way. What you say isn't always what you communicated. And what you're trying to figure out is, how do I communicate what I want to be communicating through the body language and the words and everything that's happening. And Marty was fantastic at that. And then at the end of the night too, he was great. or before we started shooting, because he came to us and he said, so when you're shooting a reel like this, there's one director. And I'm that director.
Yeah. And he was very clear.
He was very clear, which I appreciated. There was clear communication where he said, I'm the director. I'm the person that speaks to the actors. That doesn't mean you can't have opinion and that you can't express that opinion, but you express that opinion to me and I will communicate. And I thought, once again, he was so great at giving us this roadmap of how to work. So in other words, the problem that can happen is that now you've got these actors that have to channel an idea, in essence. And if they have a ton of people all shooting stuff out, how are they ever going to channel that? So it was great for him to be like, I'm the person that communicates with them. You can communicate with me, but everything that goes to those actors is going through me. And it was phenomenal to watch what happened when he would talk with them.
And then he also coached us a little bit further. Hold on, before you go there. He coached us a little bit further, and he said, now, I can't have 20 people talking to me. He said, so if behind the scenes, all of you talk to Jeff, and Jeff, you talk to me. Mm-hmm. So there was even that. It was almost, I pictured being in a submarine. And you know how in a submarine, you've got the captain that says to the deck commander who says to the dive control, and they all repeat it?
Yes.
I felt like that's exactly what he set up.
Which was great, because I've often watched movies and thought, why do they do that? And it's so that you have true communication and understanding. There is no room for error.
Right.
Or at least as minimal amount of room for error as possible.
So the day of the shoot come. Oh, by the way, so the actors, this was another cool part. So Marty found two phenomenal individuals, Becca and Michael, who are actors. Becca is Streakin and Michael is Habit. Mm-hmm. And these two came in, and we met them for the first time. So we saw headshots of them, and we saw and honestly, we just trusted Marty at this point because it was great. And he went through a number of different actors to come in and play these parts. Mm-hmm. When we met them, so we went to the studio the next day, and when we met them, I was dumbfounded at how awesome they were.
It was so much fun.
Oh my goodness.
It was so fun to take this lump of an idea that you guys had.
And when she says lump of an idea, she's like this crazy nuts idea that I thought would never come to fruition.
And to be sitting in that studio and watch them be able to take these scripts and literally bring them to life. That was the next part. Bring them to life.
Literally. And so you'd sit there and watch Marty, and he would talk with the actors. Mm-hmm. And by the way, they're phenomenal as well, because they memorized each script as we went along, because we were making changes to the scripts the night before. And it just shows the level of professionalism that they have and just how good they are at their craft. Yes. I mean, such excellent people.
And you could see it that they were really focused when we got there. I recognized how important it was that they just be communicated with by the director. Yeah. Because there is a level of focus there that was really amazing to watch.
Yeah. It was fun. Another little tidbit. So behind the scenes, Talon had rented 3 cameras, mm-hmm. and it was fun because he got a little tech upgrade where he got these mics that were hidden on the actors that you couldn't see, but that were wireless, mm-hmm. and would just capture their sound beautifully. Yes. I mean, it was just perfect.
It's great.
And as we watched these come to life, the next thing that happened is Becca took on the personification of Streakin, and she became Streakin. Mm-hmm. And what that did is take the script to another level, because she added some things, just a couple of things as the personification of Streakin that cleared it up even more.
Yep.
So, for example, in a reel that you'll see, you won't see it for a few weeks, but in a reel that you'll see, there's a line that she added that was these words, but you know what isn't? And that was not in the script. Now, mm-hmm. you're going, well, what's the big deal about that? When you hear it in the commercial, you realize how critical that little phrase was. But you know what isn't?
Yes.
And that brought it to life in a new and fantastic way mm-hmm. that I hadn't even imagined.
Yep, totally. So as you were doing these reels now,
yeah,
how did you get to the place that you were able to get it down to 8 and decide what. So that means you had 8 reels now, which is 8 minutes.
Right.
How did you decide what you wanted to communicate in those 8 minutes?
This is where...
So eight different segments, but each
right.
one 1 minute.
This is actually where the whole team, where we all got together and said, okay, what is necessary to communicate out to the world about streaking? Mm-hmm. Because, so before I answer that question, one of the things I wanted to comment, one of the things that we want to do, we wanted to make these very consumable so that people could watch them and share them. Mm-hmm. And they would want to share them.
Right.
They'd want to watch them and share them and pass them on. Because they do give a very entertaining, clear, concise difference between streaking and habit.
Right.
So how did we get to the 8 that we got to? That was the collaborative effort as well. What is it that people need to know about streaking? This is the first time they've ever been introduced to it in this realm. Usually they think about it as running across the football field naked.
Right.
And that's not this.
Mm-hmm.
This is, even though it contains the body of kind of rebelliousness, intentionalism, being able to celebrate, making a statement,
celebrating. Yeah.
What we needed to do is say, everyone in the world knows what habit is, or has some definition of it.
Definition of it, yes.
Not anyone knows what streaking is. I mean, we get visions of grandeur sometime and think, well, the first one's going to go viral to 100 million people. What we think is that through time, these shorts and reels will start to really sink in to individuals, and they will understand that inside of themselves is this power of streaking. And we chose very purposely who the actors were that would portray streaking and habit. Mm-hmm. Streaking, we wanted to be someone who was a female that was fun, but also serious, a little bit younger, but also not so young. Mm-hmm. Whereas habit, because it's been we wanted this to be a wise individual that had been around for a long time, that was lovable. Right. That you really love. Because a lot of people love habits, and that's great.
Well, and up until this point, habits was the best word that we had to describe what we're trying to accomplish.
True. Yeah.
Which is having those things be a part of our life that are important and good. And we didn't have anything else to call it. So it's morphed into this word that actually encompasses a whole bunch of things. And to be honest, it's served us well up until this point. But there have been places that we've kind of grown a little beyond it where you look at it and you're like, it's not quite serving me the way that it used to.
Well, and it's not serving society the way that it used to. I mean, it did for a long time, because you get books like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Well, habits was used there as a great catchword, but when you really look at it, it's 7 characteristics.
Right.
Or attributes of highly effective people. And inside of that are actually streaks that you do to become that way, to develop those attributes and characteristics. And so habits has served very well. And now, just like anything else, we get the opportunity to get even more advanced in our character.
Better understanding and more refined and more able to be clear, to be able to say, okay, now we know this, which means we can be even better.
Right. And that's where streaking comes in. Mm-hmm. So as you get to watching these, there's 8 of them, as we've mentioned, and they're in a series. Each one builds from the last one, but each one also stands on its own. Mm-hmm. In other words, if you were to see number 3, it would stand on its own. You may be a little bit lost as to streaking and habit because they build as characters through, and it's really a lot of fun. I mean, really is. As far as how they build. And this day that we did the shoot, it was all day. I mean, it was a full 8 hours of real work.
And I guess what I love about how it ended up happening is exactly what you said, the relationship that is created between habits and streaks.
Or streaking.
Habit and streaking. And it becomes a friendship, kind of.
Yeah.
But also an educational opportunity where you look at something that was established and the way that you've thought about it your whole life, And the way that streaking is able to introduce it and work with habit and the relationship that they build allows you the freedom to look at things differently.
Yeah,
and
it
to
really
say,
does.
Maybe there is a different way of looking at this that would be beneficial that I could implement in my life.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I do too.
That was able to be communicated. That was it.
I know. It's just kind of reveling in the moment.
So they're coming out
on February 1st is when they come out. You probably have seen there's on Instagram, if you go to the Streaking account on Instagram, or any one of the people that are out there, hopefully they're being reposted. There's a little bit of a sneak peek that's out there. And that sneak peek is pretty cool. I think we should give everyone here a little bit of a sneak peek.
I think we're giving them a sneak peek on Wednesday.
On Wednesday. No, what I'm thinking is in our podcast right here, I'm just going to play a little bit of the script or of the background, not the script, but I'll play a little bit of the background, not all of it, but just a little bit so you can hear this interaction between streaking and habit. All right. So let's do that right now.
Hi, I'm Streaking.
And I'm Habit. Oh, wait, Streaking?
No, not that kind of streaking.
Okay, so what'd you think?
I'm so excited.
It's just going to be so neat. And what we hope is that anyone listening, anyone who's, all of you who have been influenced by and helped with streaking, that you'll pass these on, that you'll use them as educational opportunities as well as entertainment value and the empowerment of being able to obviously use streaking in your life. And when you use streaking, to download the app, because in the app is the embodiment of the 3 laws of streaking, which is make it laughably simple, keep a record, and create a community, which we're going to talk about the next time, which it's going to be phenomenal. One of the things, just before we end, you and I had talked about last podcast that we were going to talk about energy, because you had found that great article on energy.
And we still are.
What I wanted to do, just real quickly, we're not going to do it all right now, but it was interesting the energy that the creative process brought into both of us and our whole team. That type of energy is difficult to bottle. And if we could bottle it and sell it on a store shelf,
it'd be great.
It would be multi-billions of dollars.
The closest we have is caffeine. I don't know.
And I don't even think so. I mean, caffeine just makes you jittery.
That's what I mean. We're so far away from being able to bottle that kind of energy.
But I think that's where, just a little mention, because we had promised you guys that we were going to talk about energy, but because this is coming out, we are going to.
We are. We did make a little bit of a tweak in the schedule. And I apologize for setting an expectation that we didn't fulfill yet.
But we are going to do that. In the next couple of podcasts, though, we're going to go into a little bit more around the energy that a community creates. Mm-hmm. We'll do that, as well as talking about the energy, about managing energy and focus, and how streaking really helps you to do that as far as energy is concerned.
Which I think I'm super excited about that, because it is a concept of changing the way that you think about necessarily managing your time, which I think we have a lot of resources out there that talk to us about how to manage our time. And that's something we're constantly working on as people that want to be productive and efficient. But this idea of managing energy to me is super huge and impactful. Yeah. And I think streaking has a huge way to help with that.
Absolutely. The other thing that's going on is we've been working with the Today Show and the Streaking with Jenna, Read with Jenna Streaking. You're going to
say it out there already.
Well, yeah.
Huh?
I mean, it's kind of neat because they've been in contact with us. We've been in contact with them. And looks like maybe something might happen with that.
We're hoping.
So
it'd be fun.
It'd be great. We'd love to meet you, Jenna.
The great thing is, even if nothing does happen specifically with the Today Show, which I actually think odds are good that it will, Jenna has a streak.
And it is to read at least one time daily. And she's calling it streaking. And that's great.
And that's what we want, is because it works.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's great.
It is absolutely fantastic. February 1st, if you haven't already downloaded the app, just know that on February 1st, it gets a major upgrade. If you've already downloaded it, you'll get that upgrade on February 1st. You'll see all kinds of great things in there. The Streaking and Habit Reels will be released. And you heard a little bit of a preview on that. And the other thing is, as always, the book that you see right behind Jamie's head there is available, and that's available at anywhere books are sold. Here's a little neat part, though. In the new version of the app, if you get a subscription, an annual subscription, you get a copy or as many copies of the ebook as you would like for yourself and to pass on to others. So that's another thing that's available there. Also, on February 1st, if you go ahead and subscribe in the app, you're going to get exclusive content, which means that when Jamie and I have guests, we're going to have a little bit of exclusive content with them. She and I, when it's just Jamie and I, we'll do a little bit of exclusive content for the Super Streakers. That's our subscribers that are Super Streakers, and you'll have access to that
A
group.
little bit more personal coaching and answering the questions.
And answering questions. And there'll be much, much more. So hopefully you enjoyed our reminiscing on these reels and can see just how significant it is to have a definition of terms. Until we talk again, you are always welcome to reach out to us via email. Me at Jeffrey, Jefffery at streakingmastery.com, or
Jami, Jami at streakingmastery.com.
Until we talk again,
Keep streaking.
Better you